Part of his writing the journals, of course, was having the tools to write with, and what Thompson carried with him was this traveling writing kit with some quills. These quills are for writing. They've been cut with a pen knife. That's where the name for a folding knife comes from, to sharpen a pen. And this is a little ink bottle that was in the bottom of this case, and they would mix powdered ink with water and carry it in the container here, and then he could dip his pen in there and write in his journals. To make the quills that you see in this traveling writing kit, what you do is you take a feather. These are simulated eagle feathers, but like goose feathers and swan feathers, etc., were used. And this is the way the feather would be natural, coming from the bird, and then you trim out the end and achieve a fine writing point. Now this quill, which comes from the feather, is this portion here, and just cut off. You see in a lot of old pictures and that on a desk set they would leave the feathers on the quill, and then they would be able to do their writing by dipping in the ink and writing. So this is just a shortened version of the ballpoint pen with the powdered ink and the bird feathers to make the quills, and this tidy little case to keep them in shape. These were also made in brass for the affluent that had a little more money to spend. Later in his life, Thompson was put on the surveying of the Boundary Commission between Canada and the U.S., and this is an alidade that is similar to a transit that's used for sighting, and he would have used something similar to this to lay out some of the cairns and whatnot that he's done. The sextant and the compasses were made in London as well, brass. The watches were extremely accurate, and I believe at times they carried two watches, but if they lost their watch, or broke it, they were in big trouble with the accuracy of their readings and whatnot, because they relied on it for the accuracy of the charts in the book to relate the sightings to positioning. So many of Thompson's maps are preserved. His great map that hung in Old Fort William is now in Toronto in the archives, and is very well protected. I have an archaeological friend that was just in England and went into one of the archives in London, and they brought some of Thompson's maps out and just handed them to him, and he unrolled them and he couldn't believe that they were done in 1814, and he was holding the maps of Thompson. So there is some work being done. Andy Corsos is trying to repatriate some of those maps back to Canada now, so that we have a little more of Thompson's artifacts and whatnot, all in, at least within the country. He was in a lot of cases the first European into many of those areas that he mapped and charted. Some of the areas that are on his maps were given to him by descriptions from from the different native tribes and whatnot that had good recollection and some of their skin maps and whatnot that they had. But I mean, Thompson's was new to everywhere in his travels, you know. He was one of the first that was recording the daily movements and where everything was. The bureaucracy in London for the Hudson Bay Company had no idea where their forts were until the maps were done, and he positioned them on the maps. So, I mean, they had some rough ideas of where they were, but they had no idea of dimension or how far anything was from anywhere else, or even what they had to go to, you know. And even when they got the map, you know, you look at a map and say, well, it's only that far, but, you know, that's 4,000 miles.